the new God of life, the new gods of life, the new God of life, the new goddess of life, the new goddesses of life, the new goddess of life, the old God of life, the old gods of life, the old God of life, the old goddess of life, the old goddesses of life, the old goddess of life, the greater God of life, the greater gods of life, the greater God of life, the greater goddess of life, the greater goddesses of life, the greater goddess of life, the lesser God of life, the lesser gods of life, the lesser God of life, the lesser goddess of life, the lesser goddesses of life, the lesser goddess of life, the higher God of life, the higher gods of life, the higher God of life, the higher goddess of life, the higher goddesses of life, the higher goddess of life, the lower God of life, the lower gods of life, the lower God of life, the lower goddess of life, the lower goddesses of life, the lower goddess of life, the greater spirit of life, the greater spirits of life, the greater spirit of life, the lesser spirit of life, the lesser spirits of life, the lesser spirit of life, the higher spirit of life, the higher spirits of life, the higher spirit of life, the lower spirit of life, the lower spirits of life, the lower spirit of life, the major God of life, the major gods of life, the major God of life, the major goddess of life, the major goddesses of life, the major goddess of life, the minor God of life, the minor gods of life, the minor God of life, the minor goddess of life, the minor goddesses of life, the minor goddess of life, the superior God of life, the superior gods of life, the superior God of life, the superior goddess of life, the superior goddesses of life, the superior goddess of life, the inferior God of life, the inferior gods of life, the inferior God of life, the inferior goddess of life, the inferior goddesses of life, the inferior goddess of life, the ancestor God of life, the ancestor gods of life, the ancestor God of life, the ancestor goddess of life, the ancestor goddesses of life, the ancestor goddess of life, the ascendant God of life, the ascendant gods of life, the ascendant God of life, the ascendant goddess of life, the ascendant goddesses of life, the ascendant goddess of life, the descendant God of life, the descendant gods of life, the descendant God of life, the descendant goddess of life, the descendant goddesses of life, the descendant goddess of life, the transcendent God of life, the transcendent gods of life, the transcendent God of life, the transcendent goddess of life, the transcendent goddesses of life, the transcendent goddess of life, the past God of life, the past gods of life, the past God of life, the past goddess of life, the past goddesses of life, the past goddess of life, the present God of life, the present gods of life, the present God of life, the present goddess of life, the present goddesses of life, the present goddess of life, the future God of life, the future gods of life, the future God of life, the future goddess of life, the future goddesses of life, the future goddess of life, the authentic God of life, the authentic gods of life, the authentic God of life, the authentic goddess of life, the authentic goddesses of life, the authentic goddess of life, the synthetic God of life, the synthetic gods of life, the synthetic God of life, the synthetic goddess of life, the synthetic goddesses of life, the synthetic goddess of life, the progressive God of life, the progressive gods of life, the progressive God of life, the progressive goddess of life, the progressive goddesses of life, the progressive goddess of life, the regressive God of life, the regressive gods of life, the regressive God of life, the regressive goddess of life, the regressive goddesses of life, the regressive goddess of life, the ordinary God of life, the ordinary gods of life, the ordinary God of life, the ordinary goddess of life, the ordinary goddesses of life, the ordinary goddess of life, the extraordinary God of life, the extraordinary gods of life, the extraordinary God of life, the extraordinary goddess of life, the extraordinary goddesses of life, the extraordinary goddess of life, the static God of life, the static gods of life, the static God of life, the static goddess of life, the static goddesses of life, the static goddess of life, the dynamic God of life, the dynamic gods of life, the dynamic God of life, the dynamic goddess of life, the dynamic goddesses of life, the dynamic goddess of life, the land God of life, the land gods of life, the land God of life, the land goddess of life, the land goddesses of life, the land goddess of life, the sea God of life, the sea gods of life, the sea God of life, the sea goddess of life, the sea goddesses of life, the sea goddess of life, the sky God of life, the sky gods of life, the sky God of life, the sky goddess of life, the sky goddesses of life, the sky goddess of life, the God of life, the gods of life, the God of life, the goddess of life, the goddesses of life, the goddess of life, the half God of life, the half gods of life, the half God of life, the half goddess of life, the half goddesses of life, the half goddess of life, the vessel of life, the vessels of life, the vessel of life, the name of life, the names of life, the name of life, the person of life, the persons of life, the person of life, the persona of life, the personas of life, the persona of life, the personage of life, the personages of life, the personage of life, the personality of life, the personalities of life, the personality of life, the personification of life, the personifications of life, the personification of life, the image of life, the images of life, the image of life, the imagination of life, the imaginations of life, the imagination of life, the belief of life, the beliefs of life, the belief of life, the thought of life, the thoughts of life, the thought of life, the word of life, the words of life, the word of life, the action of life, the actions of life, the action of life, the reaction of life, the reactions of life, the reaction of life, the feeling of life, the feelings of life, the feeling of life, the situation of life, the situations of life, the situation of life, the circumstance of life, the circumstances of life, the circumstance of life, the environment of life, the environments of life, the environment of life, the relationship of life, the relationships of life, the relationship of life, the number of life, the numbers of life, the number of life, the formula of life, the formulas of life, the formula of life, the equation of life, the equations of life, the equation of life, the theory of life, the theories of life, the theory of life, the symbol of life, the symbols of life, the symbol of life, the color of life, the colors of life, the color of life, the thing of life, the things of life, the thing of life, the way of life, the ways of life, the way of life, the place of life, the places of life, the place of life, the time of life, the times of life, the time of life, the event of life, the events of life, the event of life, the result of life, the results of life, the result of life, the crown of life, the crowns of life, the crown of life, the throne of life, the thrones of life, the throne of life, the life king, the life kings, the life kingdom, the life kingdoms, the life king subject, the life king subjects, the life king's dominion, the life king's dominions, the kingdom of life, the kingdoms of life, the kingdom of life, the life queen, the life queens, the life queendom, the life queendoms, the life queen subject, the life queen subjects, the life queen's dominion, the life queen's dominions, the queendom of life, the queendoms of life, the queendom of life, the life prince, the life princes, the life princedom, Life Prince Doms. Life Prince's subject. Life Prince's subjects. Life Prince's dominion. Life Prince's dominions. The Prince Dom of life. The Prince Doms of life. The Prince Dom of life. Life Princess. Life Princesses. Life Princess Dom. Life Princess Doms. Life Princess's subject. Life Princess's subjects. Life Princess's dominion. Life Princess's dominions. The Princess Dom of life. The Princess Doms of life. The Princess Dom of life. The Lord of life. The Lords of life. The Lord of life. The Lordess of life. The Lordesses of life. The Lordess of life. The Priest of life. The Priests of life. The Priest of life. The Priestess of life. The Priestesses of life. The Priestess of life. The Ritual of life. The Rituals of life. The Ritual of life. The Shrine of life. The Shrines of life. The Shrine of life. The Temple of life. The Temples of life. The Temple of life. The Leader of life. The Leaders of life. The Leader of life. The Follower of life. The Followers of life. The Follower of life. The Natural Substance of life. The Natural Substances of life. The Natural Substance of life. The Supernatural Substance of life. The Supernatural Substances of life. The Supernatural Substance of life. The Temporal Substance of life. The Temporal Substances of life. The Temporal Substance of life. The Spiritual Substance of life. The Spiritual Substances of life. The Spiritual Substance of life. The Natural Form of life. The Natural Forms of life. The Natural Form of life. The Supernatural Form of life. The Supernatural Forms of life. The Supernatural Form of life. The Temporal Form of life. The Temporal Forms of life. The Temporal Form of life. The Spiritual Form of life. The Spiritual Forms of life. The Spiritual Form of life. The Age of life. The Ages of life. The Age of life. The Era of life. The Eras of life. The Era of life. The Awakener of life. The Awakeners of life. The Awakener of life. The Awakening of life. The Awakenings of life. The Awakening of life. The Realm of life. The Realms of life. The Realm of life. The Dimension of life. The Dimensions of life. The Dimension of life. The Zone of life. The Zones of life. The Zone of life. The Frequency of life. The Frequencies of life. The Frequency of life. The Century of life. The Centuries of life. The Century of life. The Millennium of life. The Millenniums of life. The Millennium of life. The Purpose of life. The Purposes of life. The Purpose of life. The Meaning of life. The Meanings of life. The Meaning of life. The Culture of life. The Cultures of life. The Culture of life. The Demonstrator of life. The Demonstrators of life. The Demonstrator of life. The Demonstration of life. The Demonstrations of life. The Demonstration of life. The Manifester of life. The Manifestors of life. The Manifester of life. The Manifestation of life. The Manifestations of life. The Manifestation of life. The Presence of life. The Presences of life. The Presence of life. The Glow of life. The Glows of life. The Glow of life. The Goal of life. The Goals of life. The Goal of life. The Plan of life. The Plans of life. The Plan of life. The Book of life. The Books of life. The Book of life. The Philosopher of life. The Philosophers of life. The Philosopher of life. The Philosophy of life. The Philosophies of life. The Philosophy of life. The Releaser of life. The Releasers of life. The Releaser of life. The Release of life. The Releases of life. The Release of life. The Variable of life. The Variables of life. The Variable of life. The Cause of life. The Causes of life. The Cause of life. The Effect of life. The Effects of life. The Effect of life. The Journey of life. The Journeys of life. The Journey of life. The Emergence of life. The Emergences of life. The Emergence of life. The Source of life. The Sources of life. the source of life, the originator of life, the originators of life, the originator of life, the origin of life, the origins of life, the origin of life, the forefather of life, the forefathers of life, the forefather of life, the foremother of life, the foremothers of life, the foremother of life, the ancestor of life, the ancestors of life, the ancestor of life, the descendant of life, the descendants of life, the descendant of life, the lineage of life, the lineages of life, the lineage of life, the heritage of life, the heritages of life, the heritage of life, the heir of life, the heirs of life, the heir of life, the co-heir of life, the co-heirs of life, the co-heir of life, the joint heir of life, the joint heirs of life, the joint heir of life, the dynasty of life, the dynasties of life, the dynasty of life, the force of life, the forces of life, the force of life, the law of life, the laws of life, the law of life, the pact of life, the pacts of life, the pact of life, the game of life, the games of life, the game of life, the mask of life, the masks of life, the mask of life, the armor of life, the armors of life, the armor of life, the sword of life, the swords of life, the sword of life, the shield of life, the shields of life, the shield of life, the force shield of life, the force shields of life, the force shield of life, the armored force shield of life, the armored force shields of life, the armored force shield of life, the champion of life, the champions of life, the champion of life, the guardian of life, the guardians of life, the guardian of life, the defender of life, the defenders of life, the defender of life, the protector of life, the protectors of life, the protector of life, the chant of life, the chants of life, the chant of life, the shape of life, the shapes of life, the shape of life, the cube of life, the cubes of life, the cube of life, the cuboid of life, the cuboids of life, the cuboid of life, the sphere of life, the spheres of life, the sphere of life, the spheroid of life, the spheroids of life, the spheroid of life, the prism of life, the prisms of life, the prism of life, the pyramid of life, the pyramids of life, the pyramid of life, the cylinder of life, the cylinders of life, the cylinder of life, the cone of life, the cones of life, the cone of life, the triangle of life, the triangles of life, the triangle of life, the circle of life, the circles of life, the circle of life, the semicircle of life, the semicircles of life, the semicircle of life, the square of life, the squares of life, the square of life, the rectangle of life, the rectangles of life, the rectangle of life, the parallelogram of life, the parallelograms of life, the parallelogram of life, the rhombus of life, the rhombuses of life, the rhombus of life, the trapezoid of life, the trapezoids of life, the trapezoid of life, the polygon of life, the polygons of life, the polygon of life, the pentagon of life, the pentagons of life, the pentagon of life, the hexagon of life, the hexagons of life, the hexagon of life, the septagon of life, the septagons of life, the septagon of life, the octagon of life, the octagons of life, the octagon of life, the nonagon of life, the nonagons of life, the nonagon of life, the decagon of life, the decagons of life, the decagon of life, the evolution of life, the evolutions of life, the evolution of life, the revolution of life, the revolutions of life, the revolution of life, the elemental art of life, the elemental arts of life, the elemental art of life, the elemental science of life, the elemental sciences of life, the elemental science of life, the elemental principle of life, the elemental principles of life, the elemental principle of life, the elemental technology of life, the elemental technologies of life, the elemental technology of life, the low elemental art of life, the low elemental arts of life, the low elemental art of life, the low elemental science of life, the low elemental sciences of life, the low elemental science of life, the low elemental principle of life, the low elemental principles of life, the low elemental principle of life, the low elemental technology of life, the low elemental technologies of life, the low elemental technology of life, the high elemental art of life, the high elemental arts of life, the high elemental art of life, the high elemental science of life, the high elemental sciences of life, the high elemental science of life, the high elemental principle of life, the high elemental principles of life, the high elemental principle of life, the high elemental technology of life, the high elemental technologies of life, the high elemental technology of life, the agent of life, the agents of life, the agent of life, the agency of life, the agencies of life, the agency of life, the amplifier of life, the amplifiers of life, the amplifier of life, the amplification of life, the amplifications of life, the amplification of life, the enhancer of life, the enhancers of life, the enhancer of life, the enhancement of life, the enhancements of life, the enhancement of life, the magnifier of life, the magnifiers of life, the magnifier of life, the magnification of life, the magnifications of life, the magnification of life, the influencer of life, the influencers of life, the influencer of life, the influence of life, the influences of life, the influence of life, the emanator of life, the emanators of life, the emanator of life, the emanation of life, the emanations of life, the emanation of life, the converger of life, the convergers of life, the converger of life, the convergence of life, the convergences of life, the convergence of life, the aura of life, the auras of life, the aura of life, the impression of life, the impressions of life, the impression of life, the intelligence of life, the intelligences of life, the intelligence of life, the sophistication of life, the sophistications of life, the sophistication of life, the genius of life, the geniuses of life, the genius of life, the polymath of life, the polymaths of life, the polymath of life, the psychic of life, the psychics of life, the psychic of life, the knowledge of life, the knowledges of life, the knowledge of life, the understanding of life, the understandings of life, the understanding of life, the wisdom of life, the wisdoms of life, the wisdom of life, the secret of life, the secrets of life, the secret of life, the mystery of life, the mysteries of life, the mystery of life, the revelation of life, the revelations of life, the revelation of life, the tactic of life, the tactics of life, the tactic of life, the strategy of life, the strategies of life, the strategy of life, the strength of life, the strengths of life, the strength of life, the might of life, the might of life, the might of life, the power of life, the powers of life, the power of life, the authority of life, the authorities of life, the authority of life, the dominion of life, the dominions of life, the dominion of life, the rhythm of life, the rhythms of life, the rhythm of life, the melody of life, the melodies of life, the melody of life, the music of life, the musics of life, the music of life, the lyric of life, the lyrics of life, the lyric of life, the song of life, the songs of life, the song of life, the dance of life, the dances of life, the dance of life, the spirit of life, the spirits of life, the spirit of life, the soul of life, the souls of life, the soul of life, the body of life, the bodies of life, the body of life, the mark of life, the marks of life, the mark of life, the promise of life, the promises of life, the promise of life, the visionary of life, the visionaries of life, the visionary of life, the vision of life, the visions of life, the vision of life, the picture of life, the pictures of life, the picture of life, the sound of life, the sounds of life, the sound of life, the tongue of life, the tongues of life, the tongue of life, the language of life, the languages of life, the language of life, the communication of life, the communications of life, the communication of life, the people of life, the peoples of life, the people of life, the society of life, the societies of life, the society of life, the fortress of life, the fortresses of life, the fortress of life, the government of life, the governments of life, the government of life, the city of life, the cities of life, the city of life, the nation of life, the nations of life, the nation of life, the civilization of life, the civilizations of life, the civilization of life, the world of life, the worlds of life, the world of life,